Hi and welcome to Knit with Hannah. I'm Hannah, I'm here with Knitting Nudge to help you knit with ease, confidence and joy. And I'm going to start knitting a jumper. If you're with me, a few weeks ago we went through the Rowan Magazine for Autumn Winter 2024-25 and you will have seen that I found myself a jumper to knit, and if I can find it on the right page, I have gone ahead and started preparing, and I'm going to show you what I've been doing and how I'm getting ready to cast on. This is the jumper that I'm going to knit, the short one here, the multiple colours and the squares and blocks of colour across it. And this one appealed to me for multiple reasons. We'll go through that in a minute. But I am very aware of the fact that I would like to knit something for me again. A larger project really appeals, and really appeals is a simpler jumper or cardigan that I can wear for a lifetime, that also will feel easier to knit through than something with complex cables or ferrule or reading intarsia patterns that are different on every row, that sort of thing. So finding this, it really appealed to me. It's one of the reasons I actually opted into this magazine and why I got it in the first place. It was looking at me and saying, do you want to knit this? Don't you want to knit this? Let's have a further look. Let's see more about it and see if it feels good enough and like you enough to actually want to go ahead with it. So that's what we're doing. We are preparing to knit this jumper today. Now, this I want to create a balance of knitting for the business, testing patterns, rewriting patterns, knitting for courses and eventually for knit-alongs again as well, with knitting something for me. And I can definitely say this is for me. I'm not knitting for anybody else, I'm knitting it for me. A lot of the time when I was knitting, when I started my business, I was knitting more for family because the children were younger and they were easy to knit for. But now they have their very specific tastes and they decide what they do and don't want. And a lot of the time that means getting something with a brand name on it. It's merch, something like that. But knitting as an auntie becomes very complicated as the children get older. So while that felt like knitting for me, it doesn't feel like that anymore. And that isn't available to me anymore. We don't have babies in the family who need knitting blankets and knitted hats and that sort of thing. So I feel that that part of my life has just closed down for a bit, and I would like to bring in the knitting that I can appreciate for myself again. So this is what we're doing. This is what I'm doing. I'm going to be knitting for the business alongside and knitting this too. I also want to be very aware of the fact that I don't mind how long this takes. I'm going to talk about all of the different nuances of preparing to knit a pattern and actually getting started throughout this video. So do stick around. There's so many different ways that I'm preparing. And you can take as long about this as you want, or you can actually get going in a shorter time. I've got so many other things to juggle with knitting for the business, preparing for the business and filming other videos, etc. It's taken a bit longer than maybe I would have taken if knitting was just knitting. But there's a lot more knitting in my life, so I needed to just take that time and find the right answers when I could and when I could give it the time and the priority. So we're getting going. The first thing is, of course, reading the pattern through. And I have sat there and I have read the pattern through a couple of times. What I've also done, and this is perfectly allowed, I have purchased the pattern in the form of a book. I actually went on the website to see if this was one of the patterns that I could purchase individually as a digital download. it's not one of the patterns that I could do that with. So what I've done is taken the photographs and printed those off, so I know what it looks like from both sides. The back picture isn't actually in the magazine, but it is on the website, so I've printed those off. I need them. I need to know what it looks like from multiple sides and from multiple angles. So when I've finished knitting, I will know I've knitted the right thing that I want to replicate what the pattern states. What I've also done, because this is also allowed, I have purchased the pattern for myself. It's not copyright infringement. I'm not going off and selling it. I have taken some time and printed off the pattern as a photocopy. So I will use this, I will scribble all over it, and I will keep this with the magazine. But taking this magazine with me wherever it is that I go to knit, I do not want to do that. It's a heavy piece of kit to take with a ball of yarn and a pair of needles, or 2 balls of yarn and a pair of needles, which is more likely because I'm doing entirety and knitting here. I really do not want to do that if I want to take it out with me. If I just want to sit on the bed with it, I really do not want to do that. Having this as a big chunky thing sat on my lap, it really is not going to be comfortable. So I have printed off the pattern once I've read it through as well, and everything like that. So I do read it through. Not only does it help me understand what I'm doing in the first place, it helps me understand whether it's something I want to knit. Reading it through helps me get to grips with how it's being knitted. There are multiple ways you can knit each pattern, and if this is written in a way that feels very clunky and unintuitive as a knitting pattern, then I'm not going to start knitting it. I've knitted Rowan patterns in the past. I feel comfortable with the way they write patterns, and I like the way they've written this one. So yes, I'm going to go ahead with it. But always do that with your knitting patterns. If you are contemplating knitting something, take a look at it. Does it make sense? The simplest things can make a knitting more complicated than it needs to be. I do not want to knit a cable pattern only reading from a cable chart. I would like to read it in letters and digits all the way across the page, even if it is 25 rows of different pieces that make it the cable. I would like to read it and follow each row at a time, rather than having to follow a cable and really get my head around what exactly all of the different symbols mean on a cable chart, because it's quite complex if you read cables like that. It's a whole new language. While it's definitely doable, it really is learnable, I actually don't want that. I just want to sit there and read a cable pattern from lines of text on a page. So all of those little things, so you might say, okay, that means I don't want to do it. I've also learnt by reading the pattern there is very little shaping. And this is actually what I wanted from the jumper. When I saw the photograph, I said, I can see that's going to be an easy knit. There's not multiple shapes around the sides and darts here and shifting patterns around by the bust and all this sort of stuff. I didn't want that. I just want an easy knit. I want to go backwards and forwards along the rows. Oh look, here's a different colour. Backwards and forwards along the rows. I'm changing the colour again. Backwards and forwards along the rows. That's what I want from the knit, and that's also what I want from something that I'm wearing. I just want it to be easy. Being someone who is in the middle of her life, I'm at a point in my life where I know my shape and weight is going to be changing, it has been changing, and it's going to be likely changing, unless I'm really careful, over the next few years as well. It's that time in a woman's life where it all goes a bit bizarre. You know what it is. If you've been here, if you're here, if you're going to be here, it's all happening and it's all starting to happen and it's coming. I'm very aware of it. And I know I need a jumper that I'm just going to wear, whether I'm that weight or that weight, and it's going to be fine. Whether I'm slightly larger or slightly smaller, whether I'm one size or another. This is going to be a jumper that can wear even, this is another thing, I wanted something that I could wear with layers underneath or without layers underneath. At the moment I'm wearing this dress. I buy dresses, I buy shirts that are baggy and comfortable and loose and feel comfortable. I have a vest and I have a long sleeve top on underneath this. It's very discreet, you can't really see it. It makes me actually look larger as a person, but it means that I'm warm enough when I'm wearing this dress. If I go out and I know I'm going to be in a place where there's a lot more air conditioning and it's heated really well, like there's a member of our family who always has the heating on full and we all sit there in sweat buckets, I will barely wear anything underneath this dress. But that's really important when you're wearing something and when you are knitting something. What are you going to wear it with? What are you going to wear underneath it? All of those things can be really important if you know you want to wear it for more than a couple of occasions. I want to wear this for many years to come. I want to take care of it and look after it once I've knitted it, so I can wear it for many, many years. So thinking about that is really important too. That's something I did looking at the knitting pattern, looking at the style and looking at the photographs and looking at the measurements as well. So reading the pattern thoroughly is very important and it's a point that mustn't be missed. Certainly when you are preparing to knit something, do not miss this step. Okay, the next thing, and I haven't done this yet, I'm preparing to do it. I have pulled out some of my jumpers that are in very similar shape and they suit me and fit me in a very similar way that I hope this jumper will. This one I got from eBay and I altered it with some threads going through it just to give it a bit more interest. I mean, it's all grey. This one at least has the yellow star on it. So these are very similar shapes to the jumper that's going to come off of my needles. So I'm going to measure these again, see how they fit me, and just look at the measurements on the knitting pattern. So this is something to really take note of when you are preparing to knit something that you want to wear. So what we have here is the diagram to show us the size of the sleeve and the diagram here to show us the shape of the main body. If you look at these sizes, the shape and the size across is 22 inches here on the 1, 2, 3, third size. I measured in inches. I'm British, I'm old, that's just the way I do things. I can use centimetres, it does work in my head because that's how I was taught at school, but it was just still in the language of living in the UK during the 70s and 80s. Hey ho. If we look over here and we look to find a 44 inch, which is 22 doubled, we're going to find the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fifth size or the 1, 2, 3 third size. So here we need to really be aware of the fact that we're looking at the size of the person and here we're looking at the size of the garment. So if I'm knitting the size of the person, 44 inches, by mistake, if I decide, okay, I will knit the fifth size, I'm going to end up with a garment that is 52 inches across, 52 inches round, which is 26 inches across. That's going to be too big for me. That's going to be 4 inches across, too large for me. What I want is the 44 inches to fit a person size 36 to 38. So 44 inches across gives me ease while I'm wearing it. It gives me comfort while I'm wearing it and makes it so that I can add the multiple layers underneath if I want to. So just be very aware of that. And I'm going to go away and I'll measure some shirts as well as the jumpers and just make sure that I'm happy with that size and then I can start casting on. What size are you? What size are the garments that you already have that fit you in the way that you want this finish item to fit you? And what do the knitting pattern diagrams and photographs and charts show you about the finished size once you've knitted it. I can ensure by doing this that this new jumper will be as comfortable and will fit me and flow and be as comfortable and flattering as the jumpers that I have already. Now, this pattern uses Rowan Felted Tweed DK. It's a very familiar yarn to me. This is another reason I picked out this magazine and said I want it this year. Because when I organised myself and got this pattern ready to knit and got this book, I checked first to see which yarns were in it. Rowan looks at its magazines and it says which yarns are we going to put in it primarily, which will be the secondary yarn, and are we going to mix them up more or really stick to a couple in this magazine. Some years I've looked at them and gone, nah, I don't really fancy knitting with those yarns, so I haven't got the knitting book. I haven't got the magazine. But looking at this one, I thought, you're on. I want to knit with Rowan Felted Tweed DK because I've knitted with it so many times before. It feels familiar. Now, there's a video from earlier this autumn. It may even have been released in the summer. Yes, I think it was. It could have been August, actually. It was repeating in my knitting. One of the things I said in that video was familiarity. We like repeats because we like familiarity. And one of the things I mentioned in that was how knitting with a familiar yarn makes a new pattern, a different pattern, feel easier because the yarn feels so familiar. So that's one thing I wanted. If I was going to approach knitting a jumper again, when I actually haven't knitted a large garment like this for a good while, I wanted to sit down and say, I'm familiar with this yarn. It's not something I have to get used to. It's not something I have to say, I haven't knitted with these needles in a long time, because I knit with these needles constantly. I will feel very comfortable knitting with this yarn, with this size needles, and reading a pattern from a Rowan magazine. Like I mentioned, I've knitted from Rowan magazines before. The way that the patterns are written feels familiar, it feels comfortable, it feels good. So in that respect, new pattern, larger item. It's not me writing the pattern, so I'm not knitting from my own knitting pattern, which I've been doing for a very long time now. But there's so many things about it that feel familiar, feel comfortable, feel cosy. It's right. That's an important thing. So, the yarn. Now, the suggested colours here, doesn't that look like red? On all of the photographs, it looks like red. So I got it because it's even called Barn Red. So I got it, and it's very brown. I thought, while I would have worn this a good few years ago now when my hair wasn't going so grey, it's not something that I think I will be able to wear for a very long time. When my hair is greyer, when my hair is whiter, I'm not going to probably want to wear this colour. I want to wear a burgundy, a red, something that looks like what was actually in this pattern. I would say the colour looks different in this photograph because of her red hair. It's probably picking up that and it's just slightly changing it. It's one of the weird things that happens with colours in photographs. I realise that now from doing so much on video. So yeah, this I knew wasn't going to suit me, and it was, I think I have it here, yes. This is a yarn that was knitted up. This is the yarn colour that's knitted up. That was going to go with it. So we're going to knit with this and this. I thought, I do not want them next to my face. So I said no. I got this yarn, rather annoyingly. I got enough of it to knit the jumper, and I just eventually had to say no. So what I am going to knit with is this. It's a dark pink in some ways. It's a burgundy. It's got a real plummy colour to it, and I think I could wear this for many years to come. So I'm really happy knitting with this as the main colour of this jumper. I am going to use the bilberry purple. That is recommended. I've knitted with this, I've worn this, love it. Now, someone suggested in the comments of the video, when I reviewed this magazine, navy, pine green, purple, and I thought, yes, I want that too. Maybe when this is done, I've knitted this jumper, I will knit one in another group of colours. But for now, I'm going to use the plum. I'm going to use the bilberry. I'm going to use this as the colour that's nearer my face, just around for the collar and around the cuffs. I am going to continue using the ginger. That will go in the centre at the front. And I will use the cumin, or possibly this, let me think what it's called, this mineral yellow. This mineral yellow, as far as I can tell, is only used for the embroidery. So I have a spare of this, it's leftovers. So I've got that, I've got it ready to knit with if I want it. If it's needed for a small square or something. But there's a cinnamon needed as well. So these colours all go well together, and I believe that's going to end up looking like a really nice jumper. I have the yarn. All of the colours are chosen. I've got as much as I need. It's all good to go. A lot of these were sat on my shelf, so I didn't need to buy anything new. I've gone for this grey, which I think is aluminium, and this was a leftover from when we did the sashiko cowls in the autumn. I've had this cinnamon sat around for a very long time, and obviously this is a leftover, so that's fine. I think all I actually needed to buy was this barn red. I have so much of this bilberry purple in half balls and leftover balls. I weighed it all, and there's more than enough to knit with for what I need for this jumper. So I'm more than happy to knit with that. There's quite a lot of it on the back, as you can see, and there's a decent amount on the front right at the beginning of the knit as well. So that's good to go. Now, I need the needles as well. I also need something to carry it around with. This is something that's really excited, and I want to share with you today this beautiful bag. This is a beautiful project bag, hand printed and designed by Alex Collins. I've got this. She's a UK project bag designer for knitters and crocheters. This is the large bag that I've got here, and while it can fit this magazine in it, I'm not going to carry, like I said, I'm not going to carry the magazine around with me everywhere. That's a lot of weight just for a single pattern. But I'm going to put maybe 3 balls of yarn in at a time. I will have my needles in there, my current part of the knit, and I will have the printed pattern with the photographs. And I'm going to print off one part of the pattern at a time, scribble all over it as much as I need to, and then use the next bit. That is all I need to carry around with me. And I will, like I say, I will carry around the yarn that I need at the moment, and everything else will sit in another bag. I have these bags from Wool Warehouse, and I have so many of them, which hold what is necessary for my leftovers, my current yarns, and all that sort of stuff. So the bags that I have from them over the years aren't utilised. Some of them actually hold my finished knits that are samples for a lot of my patterns. But this bag from Alex Collins is beautiful. It's big enough for the longest needles, which I'm really pleased about. And I will leave a link to her shop down below. It's an ideal ask for a Christmas gift. She's got lots of different sizes and lots of different styles, lots of different patterns in her shop. So do go and have a look. Support her, small business, UK based. Like I say, she designs and screen prints all of her own patterns and then sews them up herself as well. So it's a lovely bag. I'm really pleased and I'm really happy, looking forward to using this as I go through this jumper. And like I said, I have a lot of these knitting needles I've used for years. I have this pair, and I have bought myself just a couple of different sizes. I've got the width right, but I just want different lengths to knit with. If I'm not happy with the longer needles because there are so many stitches, then I will move to circular needles. But it is really useful just to have them while I'm starting. And these Basics Birch knitting needles from Knit Pro, not only are they sustainable, they come in cardboard package, but they're a really good value for money as well. So I'm more than happy to get these, and they will be there for the rest of my knitting journey too. There's just lengths of the widths that I just don't have available. I've got the middle ones and some shorter ones in a different size. It's all a bit complicated. This is 3.5mm that I'm knitting with for this jumper. I very rarely use that size, and I only think I have one pair of needles in that size, and it just didn't fit what I wanted. 3.5mm, I generally knit with 3.25 or 4, and 3.5mm has barely touched my knitting knife at all. So new needles are really helpful. It's really important to get everything ready before you start knitting so that you know you can just knit as much or as little or as long as you like, knowing that the next bit is ready for you. Funnily enough, I sat down yesterday. Here we are right at the beginning of December as I film this, and by the time you watch this video, I will already be knitting this. I sat down yesterday on the 2nd of December and planned all of the YouTube videos for February, half of February and all the way through January. I want to know that I can film whenever I want to, I can just keep going and everything will be ready when it is needed. I love being that far ahead, but I love just knowing, even if I'm not going to get to it until a good few weeks from now, maybe even a lot of it after Christmas, I know that it's there. That's my forward thinking, that's how I work best, and the anxiety just goes away. That's exactly how I feel about my knitting projects. I like to know what's coming next, not just to have this big blank space in front of me. And that means a lot of the time I actually don't want to finish what I'm doing now because I'm scared of the nothingness that's in front of that's waiting for me, and I have to do so much planning and so much understanding and organisation there before I keep going. So, yeah, coming up against something that is a nothingness isn't going to happen with this jumper. It's prepared, it feels ready, and I can just start knitting. I think this is the next important point. I would like to knit this in a relaxed way. I am not concerned about timelines or deadlines or anything to do with speed of knitting. I would like to put this on my needles and knit it and see how it goes. Who knows, this may be a complete disaster. I might put it on my needles and start knitting it. I honestly don't think that's going to happen because I'm more than happy with this needle size. I'm more than happy with this yarn, and I'm more than happy with the pattern. But if you start knitting something that's just a bit different to what you're knitting before, you may get to a point where you kind of go, actually, I don't want to knit this anymore. That's okay. That's fine. And I'm more than happy if that happens here. Like I say, I don't think it will, but that's all right. And I'm more than happy for this to sit on my needles and move along at a steady pace. And I only start wearing it in January in 13 months' time. And I'm happy for it to sit on my needles and to have finished it by the end of February. I don't know what's going to happen, and I don't have any timeline for it. I just want to knit it. I want to enjoy knitting it enjoy the stitches and the familiarity of the yarn, and to know that someone else has made all the choices for me as I move through the pattern. I haven't got to sit there and go, now what should we do? Do you want to do a bit longer for this bit or a bit shorter for this bit? Or should it actually change shape? Or where does the cabling sit? That sort of stuff. Now at the moment I'm doing a lot of that with the patterns, because I'm looking at older patterns from 10-15 years ago, redeveloping them, reworking them, testing them again, and just making choices about them. I'm even knitting with different yarns. I'm slightly altering the pattern somehow, or changing the way that the pattern is written so that it's easier to read when you are knitting it. All of those sorts of things actually are quite complex. And as I go through and I make the changes and I work as a designer, it's a lot more focused, and it is in a completely different perspective to how I want to knit this. From this, someone else has made the choices. I'm just going to knit it. It's something to pick up when I don't want to do everything else and make all the choices myself. I'm just going to knit it. I've already chosen the yarn colours. I've already chosen my needles. I've already got everything ready so I can just start knitting. And I've already got everything ready so I can continue knitting quite happily. I think that is a very important point. Really be aware of that when you're knitting something as well. And I'm going to be really aware of that when I'm knitting this, is there is no timeline. It will sit alongside my other knitting commitments, and it's going to be something that feels calmer and easier and more relaxing, I think. I'm pretty sure. And it's going to be an interesting experiment because, like I say, I've not knitted something like this as big for me with this much need for a particular fit in a very long time. So I really am excited about knitting this, and I'm looking forward to getting going with it, and I may well get going with it. I have something on my needles that I want to complete, and then this will go on my needles. Do go and have a look at Alex's bags. I will leave her website link below in the description. They're lovely bags, they really are. This is the large size. She has a smaller size. She has a bag for socks which has drawstring, top, and lots of different patterns as well. This is Winterberry, I do believe. And I chose the red one because, I mean, who wouldn't when you're knitting with these colours, right? Makes sense, yeah? So that's why I've chosen this one. And yeah, go over and have a look. And if you are more curious about the Rowan book, or if you've already watched it and you just fancy looking at it again, then do go and have a look at the Rowan Knitting Magazine review. I've gone through that, and also let me know in the comments, would you like me to do more of those reviews, more of those Rowan Magazine reviews, and even other things as well, because that was a very popular video and a lot of people watched it, and I think it helped a lot of people in ways that I never could have imagined. So if you'd like me to do that again, then I will certainly get more Rowan magazines and other magazines if you'd like me to. Let me know which ones you'd like me to take a look at, and I will see if I can find them and we can look at them together. So do let me know about that in the comments as well. What are you knitting at the moment? Are you knitting a jumper? Are you putting something new on your needles like I am? Thank you so much for watching. I will see you again soon. Bye for now. Happy knitting.